My name is Meg Edwards, and I'm a GTD coach. And today I'm here with Melinda, who is a healthcare executive. And today we're going to be talking about the incredible benefits of what happens when we have others around us in the workplace install and implement and integrate the Getting Things Done methodology. At GTD Focus, what we do is we do one-on-one coaching. But what happens usually, and this is the case with Melinda and her organization, somebody comes to us and they're just trying to get control over their own workflow, right? They've got to get control over, what they're responsible for, the projects that they have, agendas and waiting fors and someday maybes and email and paper and all of that. And that's where a lot of the focus is just on me. But then all of a sudden, a lot of people come up, for air, and they come up and they look around and they're like, wow, what would it be if I had my colleagues also go through this, or my direct reports, or my executive assistant, or what would it be like if I even get people that I report to, and that we're all kind of on the same page with the Getting Things Done methodology. So we decided to do a series on this about what is it really like for people, and what do they experience when they have others around them also up and running on GTD. And so, Melinda, why don't you just share a little bit about your experience, and then we'll just kind of have a conversation about what this has been like for you.
Thanks, Meg. I would say that I, of course, came to you because I needed help as an individual, and I learned so much from how the tools could help me to streamline my work and keep me focused and help me to be organized. And in my role in my healthcare organization, I have a dyad partner who also did the GTD coaching individually. And we recognized that if it worked for the two of us, it would be beneficial to spread and share it to our team so we were all speaking the same language. So the people that report to us were where we started. And then we spread that out to other leaders that we work with. And it has made a tremendous difference in just how we get things done, how we're all focused on the key core tasks, and mostly how we can stay structured. The structure has been the most important part of it, because in some organizations, you run hard, you run fast, you're very busy, and having the tools that you need to really maintain that structure and maintain that consistency has been tremendously valuable for us. Our team has benefited greatly from having the coaching as individuals, and then as a team. It makes it a difference when we are calling each other out on, remember the threefold nature of work. You have to decide what's the next action, and being able to relate and sort of tease one another to make sure we're moving things forward has been a tremendous asset for us as a group.
And going back to that threefold nature of work, which is for those people who may not be quite familiar, but they've heard about it because it's such a key component, is that's where you have space. I mean, one of the things that we've been really working on when I first started working with Melinda, and I looked at her calendar and I was like, there was hardly any space for the threefold nature of work, right? There was no space for really spending time doing the work, right? That's what ends up happening is you end up doing it before work, after work, on weekends. There wasn't enough space to clarify and organize. So when you do the back-to-back meetings, right, there wasn't the time to be able to really unpack what had transpired in that meeting so that you could then spend time clarifying and organizing. What did you leave the meeting with? Do you have a new project? Or maybe it's a someday maybe, or maybe you've got waiting fors, right? And then you needed time for the unplanned, because what happens if there's no space for the unplanned, you have to reschedule people for the unplanned. So what has been that experience like for you to work on creating that space in your calendar?
So that has probably been the hardest yet most rewarding part of the work that we've done. Calendar management, putting time on the schedule to review and clarify has been a tremendous boost to just our productivity and keeping track of things. And then blocking for that unplanned work time. That has been crucial, because you're right. You're running hard all day long. When you're sitting in back-to-back meetings, there's not a lot of time to think about, what do I need to do next? What's my next deliverable on this initiative? And so a few of the things that you taught us as we worked through this process was, you should never have an hour-long meeting. It should be 45 minutes, and use those last 10 or 15 minutes to review and clarify and really put the tools to work. So we've implemented that unplanned work time. I'm happy to report that today my schedule has 4 hours of unplanned work time so that I can do some of the work. That would have never happened before the GTD coaching. It would have been full. I would have thought that it was necessary to have it full. And I've recognized that there's a difference between being in the work and working on the work. And the on the work part is where the clarity comes. And that really comes back to that threefold nature of work and controlling your schedule with it.
And that is, I think, the case for most people with the calendar. I think they're flabbergasted when I started working with them. Usually the first call was just like, show me the calendar. Yes. I think when people have all the space that they need, I don't think they necessarily kind of reach out. Talk to me about the common language that you have found when you are interfacing with your colleagues, when you're talking about, after a meeting, you're like, well, wait a minute, is this a project that we're going to do? Or should this be a someday maybe? Or is this an idea? Tell me the shift in that by having that common language for all of you.
I think the biggest shift for that has been just really clarifying the next action steps and being able to say to the team, is this just a to-do or is this a project? And if it's a project, who needs to be included in that project and where does it go on the project list? Is it a project that we're delegating? Is it a project that we're owning? And putting that in the appropriate spot on the list and figuring out what we do next. Having the ability to say to someone, where are you with this project? Who are we including as our key stakeholders? As I said, I have a partner in the work that I do, and we consider ourselves co-creators. And sometimes when you have a co-creator, you can step on each other's toes on projects. So having that clarity around who's owning it, what part are they owning, and what's the next action has been most helpful. The area where I have found the most benefit is the someday maybe file, because things seem to be on a list for an indefinite point of time, and you look at it, and just clarifying that and saying that's a someday maybe. That is not something we need to work on right now. It's a nice to, but not a have to. Let's put that on our someday maybe list has really been helpful, because I think sometimes in teams, we feel like we have to do everything that's presented to us. And the tools here really helped us to recognize that you don't need to lose sight of it, but maybe it's not our priority. And that someday maybe list can be crucial for just mental health some days on. That's not a priority. That's a someday maybe. So that's been really beneficial for us.
I'm so glad you said that, because I still think that the someday maybe list is the most underutilized list. Because I think what happens is that you get an email or you have a conversation with somebody, you have a meeting, and all of a sudden you think that everything that comes your way has to be a new project, instead of being able to evaluate it against what you already have. And that gets into the prioritization. And I think that's one of the things I've noticed when we're coaching folks individually, is they now are not looking at it in isolation. They're looking at it against a complete inventory of their commitments. And then they can decide, well, wait a minute, this now is a priority. So we're going to take this project and either put it on hold or make it a someday maybe, or delegate it to make room for it. So it's just not this adding and adding and adding and adding and looking at it in isolation. And that's one of the things that I find happens as more people are doing the getting things done methodology, is that you can have that conversation. Because I think that a lot of times in organizations, there's a fear of, if I say no, what's the repercussions? Or I'm overwhelmed, because you're overwhelmed about something, or you're overwhelmed because you haven't clarified and organized it. So you don't want to take something on because you're overwhelmed. But if you just clarified and organized that other piece, you weren't overwhelmed and you could take that on. So what I find is that the more people that are doing GTD, there's this integrity. That it's not the word, the integrity is not the quite word. You can trust that when your direct reports are saying, hey, I don't know how to make room for this, that you can have that strategic conversation with them, because you know that they have a complete inventory. You know that they're doing their weekly reviews. You know that they can say to you, hey, help me prioritize this to fit this in so that I can meet my agreements. Because so much of the getting things done methodology is managing your agreements. And there's nothing worse than if you delegate something to somebody and they're like, oh, yeah, I can do it. And then you go back and check in on them and there's no movement because they weren't able to make space for it, but they didn't have that ability to have that strategic conversation with you on the prioritization. And I find that with all of you having your colleagues and direct reports and everybody, I find it's a wonderful conversation to be able to have because they have been doing their weekly reviews and they do have that full inventory to have that strategic conversation. Have you also found that?
I have. I would say that when we all meet and we are talking about our initiatives as a system, and our goals as a team, it's much easier to figure out what do we do next just based on the clarity around who's owning which parts of the projects, how they're managing the projects, and where they need to reach out to a teammate for capacity. It's also been helpful when others have brought things to us that maybe is a priority for them, but isn't meeting our goals as a team, for me to be able to say, well, what would you like us to give up in order to prioritize this? Because these are our primary initiatives and the team is at this amount of capacity. I've also found that the team feel empowered. They have really been great about saying, here's our work that we're doing already. So if we're going to shift our focus or have a different alignment on something, we have to decide what we're giving up because basically our list is full. And it really allows them to feel like they own the work and they are engaged in the work, but they don't feel put upon with the work that they're doing because they recognize that as leaders, we're going to say to them, what does it look like and what do we need to give up? Having that clarity has been the most important thing I think we could do for the team, because it allows them each week to know, what do I need to prioritize for the next week? What should be on my calendar in order for me to move these things forward? And what is sitting on my calendar that maybe doesn't belong there because it doesn't align with some of my priorities?
And I'm curious about what have you noticed with people in their response time with emails?
So actually, it's been fantastic. Getting the email to zero was probably one of the first things that I learned in my coaching. And probably it's sort of like going to the gym. You do really well at it and then you sort of backslide a little, then you do really well at it again. But the team has really rallied around the clarity and how you can take what hits your email and what you know you need to do something with and what you know you can just get rid of. And that's freeing as an executive to think, I don't need to pay attention to that. It can just move to a folder and I don't have to look at it again. And so the team recognizes, and I recognize, that you pay attention to the things that are important for your priorities that are on your list and everything else is just noise. And that has been very freeing for time and for just clarity around the work that's being done.
I always wish that I had a video where when we finally get to zero, because they never think that they always say to me, there's no way you're going to get me there. And they get there and the feeling that they get of not having that drag of those hundreds or thousands of emails or that scrolling, trying to find something is just, I just really wish one day I just want to say, we're almost there. Can I just screenshot, can I just video this piece? What would you like to say to people who are this kind of, they've signed up for the coaching, and they think, how can I possibly get this into my organization? What would be some of the thoughts that you might want to, or the tips that you might want to share for somebody who's in that situation? Because we find that a lot. We find that when we're coaching people individually, they're like, wow, I wonder how I can get this into my organization.
So I would say that the value that we have found has been tremendous. And in most organizations, there's some type of educational funding or conference funding. And I would advocate strongly that they're going to get a way bigger return on investment by doing the GTD coaching for them as individuals and their teams than they will from any conference, bar none. Not that the conferences aren't important, but the work that you do daily and having the tools you need to do that work every day and to be proficient and efficient and to really be a high functioning team is going to be a huge return on investment for any health system or any system for that matter. And we have found that to be true in every case. The investment itself is just, it's priceless. it really makes the best difference in how your team functions and get things done. And every organization will find value in it. So I would strongly advocate that they start with that premise and say, you're going to get way more out of me and I'm going to be way more focused. And our team is going to be more high functioning and we'll hit our targets and we'll hit our goals. And all of those things will be accomplished by investing in the coaching. I believe that wholeheartedly and would advocate for that strongly, just because of the value that it's brought. I would also say that if you're part of any kind of structure, whether it's a straight line, a dotted line, a matrix, the coaching applies. And you can use it and actually use it to guide some of the work that's being done throughout your system. Even if others are like, no, I'm not interested, they will start to see what you're doing and how you're getting things done, and sort of the modeling of the behaviors, and then they're going to want a piece of that action, and then that's a catalyst for, well, this is where the value comes from. So those are the things that I would say to use as a jumping off point.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking this time. And then I look forward to our next call.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, bye for now.
Thank you.
For more GTD resources, please visit gettingthingsdone.com and David Allen's YouTube channel. For more information on GTD coaching, please email us at info@gtdfocus.com or visit our website at gtdfocus.com.